Here, we have one down here. Ella, we'll slide it over. Here, Maria. No, we'll slide it down. Don't worry about it. No, αυτός δεν δουλεύει. Here, we have one down here. Ella, we'll slide it over. Here, Maria. And see you hear whatever you want to hear. Yes, bravo. 100%, 100%. Θα το πω αυτό στη Σοφία. Yeah, that was τεράστιο. I forgot to text her back. Thank you for reminding me. Bravo. 100%, 100%. Θα το πω αυτό στη Σοφία. Yeah, that was τεράστιο. I forgot to text her back. Thank you for reminding me.
In this ridge. Really?
So make sure you all smile because you're going to be on live stream. So yeah, you're on candid camera. Yeah, so now we're on Zoom. So this is for our EE meetings as well too. So when we have our discussion, it'll be on the live stream so people can see what we're doing. And just so you know, there's always like a 10-second delay. So I won't have quick enough time in case someone says a bad word, so be careful. No swearing. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking with you. And that's what you see there. That's YouTube. So this is our YouTube page where many of you might have it because then you can see our services online and other activities. And then we'll connect it to our Facebook and then you guys will be able to watch it there as well. So that's what you see now. And I have this up just in case someone pops on so we can welcome them. We should be good and then we'll go from there. So, all right, with Prosefino, start with the prayer and we'll go from there. Okay, όλοι μαζί, Πάτερ ημών, ο εν της ουρανής, αγιαστείτε το όνομά σου, ελθέτω η βασιλεία σου, γεννηθείτε το θέλημά σου, ως εν ουρανό και επί της γης. Των άρτων ημών των επιούσιων, δώσ' ημίν σήμερον και άφεση ημίν τα οφειλήματα ημών, ως και εμείς αφίεμεν τις οφειλέτες ημών, και εμείς ενέγεις ημάς εις πειρασμών, αλλά ρίσε ημάς από το πονηρού. Βασιλεύ ουράνιο παράκλητη το πνεύμα της αληθείας, ο πανταχού παρών και τα πάντα πληρών, ο θησαυρός των αγαθών και ζωής χορηγός. Ελθέ και σκήνωσον ημίν και καθάρισον ημάς από πάσης κυλίδος, και σώσον αγαθέ τας ψυχάς ημών. Amen. Kalimera, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for being with us. So, being that today is our first day together, offering our morning cafe, glikizmata, and all the beautiful things. So, thank you for bringing everything. I wanted to kind of begin openly with all of you before we kind of get into some deep themes about understanding our thriskia, about our faith. So it's more up to, I want to kind of offer today to be more open to discussion, thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, anything that you might see yet in Ecclesia Mas for our church and our faith. Now, all of you are elders, my mother's age, my yaya was even older. But you're close to my mother's age. My mom being that she's turning 70, my father is 73, so a little bit older, somewhere in that vicinity, all in some manner. Where do you guys see the church, and how does it relate with yourselves, with your understanding? I know most of all of you. I know your children, and then even your grandchildren, possibly even great-grandchildren. So the question then is, how did you raise your families, and where do you see it now in 2022? Is there naturally any worry? Is there any stenochoria? Is there hope? Is there albida? What is it from you? What do you see?
There's a lot of worry, Father, but there's hope, a lot of hope. A lot of young, you see them at your church, a lot of young people, all over the world, no matter where you travel. But they also have a set mind, that they don't really follow the traditions the way they should.
I have a question to you, the moms. I mean, they're all here tonight. How do we create a Sunday church? What does that mean? Kind of what you said, because all of you were part of the church. You all worked. Many of you either worked, raised your families, or multitasked. So I question, how did we create the attitude that literally for an hour to an hour and a half on a Sunday accounts for us being Christians or to participate in a Christian life? Because what I'm trying to imply is that most families participating really come on Sundays. And they'll come for an hour and I know all of you know, because you tell me, but it's funny because then when we go to when we go to watch if you see a service at our church, okay, it's very funny because I will, you go back, you see the service, what it was, and I'm going to show you Ligo na Yelaste que Sis. Where are we at? Yeah, you're right. But look what you're about to see, okay? So this is this Sunday. Okay, second Sunday of Luke, all right? We see it, okay? Bravo, Maria.
Thank you.
Okay, so right here, Simeora into the service, the church is out. Now this is the orthro, right? Okay, and though we're about to start the liturgy, an hour 5 in, and it's getting little people, but then literally, and that's, you're talking about now 9:15, 9:20 in the morning. So then here, now we've started the liturgia and still happening. Now it's kind of like, where are our families? How do we progress them into the attitude that here at 9:30 when the liturgy starts, that we're still not just empty, but we have not participated? And the reason why I ask this is because then if you go to 2 hours, fills up more. You go to 2:40, filled, okay?
Yes.
And then you're like doing the autoclasia. We all took communion, catechetico scholio, and everyone in Sunday school, and this is where we're at. Because what I'm trying to imply is, so what's the point of church? What's the point of why we're here? Why do you guys participate? I mean, I know all of you do. You gain wisdom, you pray, you are in a community, you get to sing together. Like I charge everyone Sunday, we all need to sing moving forward, all these things. But the question I have is, what does everyone do on a Sunday morning from 8 to 10 o'clock in the morning? I mean, does it take that long to get dressed to come to church? Or 2 hours?
Come on.
Yes,
No.
I have to
That's-
eat in an hour. I have to take 3 pills
Oh,
before I.
okay, gotcha. But hold on. Most people I know, look, I have 3. Hold on, I have
An
3. Hold on.
apostle on here.
But I have 3 boys. I have Presbyteric gets them ready. I help to get them ready too. I wake up in the morning. I mean, we're all up early, very rare, and I know all of you. You're all busy bees. You all work. You're all up early. So my question, and even to the families, we have an attitude where we're like, we need to relax, we need to rest, right? It's always about the week is so busy, the week is so busy. But then I question them when I talk with families. So I talk to your kids, I talk to your grandkids, and I ask them, what are you so busy with? And obviously, school's there, but then you start hearing all the leptomedios. You hear the other fine details, sports, events, extracurriculars, and all these other things, where their lives are so intense that they don't even know how to like breathe from being underwater. So then when we come to Sunday, I get people who come. Now here's me as a priest. Okay, I'm thankful. We're blessed. We have a beautiful community. We get people to be there by 10:30, whatever. But then we're losing sight of why we're even doing what we're doing. Because you all know, I mean, you had papadas before from here, Father Triandafili, Father Peter. We had older priests like Father Byron of the South Side, Father Kutulas, Father Leonakis, you name all these priests. And I mean, they would say, if you're not there for liturgy, why bother to come? If you're not there at Eblogimani, when they say Eblogimani to raise the gospel, begin the service, what's the point? Or then you then ask the question, what's the point of the orthro, the Mass? Because that is a preparatory service that leads us into the liturgy. Now, we have to understand how we do these liturgias and akoluthias. But the question that I have then is, so then how would you, as parents and grandparents, challenge your families and your kids to understand the importance of participating, not going? I think going, with all due respect, is irrelevant. I can go to a store. I can go to a show. That means nothing. How do you participate? That's why Sunday, I was telling everyone we need to sing, because singing, even if you don't know how to sing, you know how to sing real well or whatever, you don't know the language, whatever it is, it's a participation. Me with them and them with me. And that's important because then you're making it meaningful, even if it's for little kids or obviously as adults. But all of you participate in one way or another. What are your feelings on this discussion? what do you see? Why do you see that it's almost kind of like, I call it a bad habit. You know, you have people who will come, us Greeks, hold on, perimeter, and then most of us being Greeks, we pull on a bad attitude. Don't worry, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, don't worry, Greek time. And that's bad. I'm sorry, I'm bad at it too. We get away, you get a pass. God, actually, okay, got the abate or ligokinisi, right? A little traffic, something, whatever, but that usually doesn't bode well. So I got 2 hands. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I'm a newbie. I'm Pam Weinroth. Nice to see you all. We're new to the church and
Pam's from Colorado,
Colorado.
Denver.
Grew up at St. John's in Des Plaines. My mom Dina. Just moved back from Colorado. We have
Their daughter Delana is in our community. She's been for a few years. They have a wonderful son-in-law, James, and they have a beautiful granddaughter, great-granddaughter too, Dionisia.
We've been very active in the church. I am on the National Philippus Executive Board. Hope to get involved here at Philippus, but we're happy to be here. I would like to answer your question.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from you.
I don't think it gets put on the calendar, quite honestly. I think our lives today, I see it with my children too,
Oh, it's not a priority?
is not made a priority. So every
Excellent.
sports event, whatever we do in our lives is in our phones or on our calendars, church is not.
Yep.
So it's an afterthought. It's not that they don't want to
Right,
come or that they don't think about coming, but it's not made a priority. So it's not an appointment time. It doesn't start at a particular time. It doesn't,
Mhm.
it's just something we do on Sundays. We go, as you said, I think that's a really interesting distinction. And it is something that I know for us, having grown up here, when we moved to Colorado and had children, that was something that Father Lou Christopoulos really made a point of saying was, put it on your calendar, make it a priority, show up when church starts, don't show up later. For a long time, they had switched Sunday school at our parish to before services.
Wow.
So Sunday school started at 8:30 in the morning on
Wow.
Sunday to try and get families to show up together.
Go ahead, that's a good topic too.
It was something that worked for a while,
Mhm.
but then what was happening is parents would drop their kids off.
Yes,
Yes.
And then come back.
Yes.
Sometimes that's the problem, yes.
But I think personally, it's when you make it a priority, when you actually make it something that it's an appointment. It's just like every other commitment we have throughout the week. And as a family, you make a commitment to be there on time. Or as my son always says, if you're on time, you're late. He was an altar boy.
right,
so
to be there early.
always early. So I think that's part of it. I don't think we actually build it into our weekly routine. It's just something that we've grown up with and we live with, and we do it when we can or when it's convenient. And if we're a little late, okay, sometimes you're gonna be late.
Yeah.
That happens, but if you commit to it as part of your week
Mhm.
and as part of the rhythm of your week and
Ah.
really make it a priority, I think it makes a big difference. And I will tell you personally, having been in the process of moving now for a long time, not being at church every Sunday has messed up my.
Throw you off.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're finally moved in, looking forward to getting back into the rhythm. It really does mess with the whole routine,
Mhm.
if that's what you've been used to.
Well-
But I think for our kids, we need to encourage them to make it part of their calendar commitment.
Yeah, and I know we had a couple other hands raised, we'll get to them. Those are obviously the excellent and key points. I mean, let's look at the example of, you said with the calendar, and appointments. Why do you think, Holy Wednesday, Holy Friday, Holy Saturday, Palm Sunday, those are distinct days, Christmas? Yeah, but I would only put those, and we define them as creasers, we get it, but those are the most impactful services that our communities participate in, because the people have scheduled it, they determine it. They know if there's an afternoon service or an evening service, they do their thing. But it goes back to what you said before, and I think that's what, for me, it gets a little, when I say disheartening, it's like in the loss of life in the translation, where then all those other big feasts, Panagias, I even looked at Panagias, now I get it, okay, it fell on a Monday, we were, people just came the day before, or maybe they went to Vespers, at Panagias, we have a few of them around here, But I personally thought it would actually been more, knowing with the amount of people that either have their name day or celebrate someone with their name day, plus being the Panagia, which we all have such a reverence for. You would think that truthfully all the churches would try, even being that unless the kids already started, school. Especially here in the northwest suburbs, it's a very kind of fluid time period. Usually I had kids started August 13th, which is really early. And you got other ones that start the week after, so they'll try to come. But then I guess I asked the parents, and it goes back to what you said as well too, is it in the calendar? The prioritization of it, I think, is the real key to it, because all of you had your kids come to church, okay? And they all participated. I think your children, because of how you taught them, especially from me, you taught them really well. But they also were kind of taught in that manner you're talking about, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even the 90s. It was almost a expectation. And again, it goes back to us of the disservice from my end, where we're not, I think for us as clergy, where we filled a lot of the communities, is we've not taught the hows and whys to make it meaningful. Goes back to what I said before about I just go instead of participate. And that's why a lot of the communities become so transient. And then when I say transient, you just kind of, it's like a revolving door. Now, we're fortunate up here, we're in the northwest suburbs, where most Greek Americans and even the young families are now living into this area, because they're not going to raise their family in the city. They're going to come out here. It has everything you need. It has great schools. You're going to get a bang for your buck and everything else. But I said that's very temporal as well too. You've seen how much has changed in 50 years from when my parents, when they lived by Panagia as an Assumption up North Avenue, and then they went south instead of moving north. I mean, people can move and they can travel different times. We see it now post the pandemic, people moving to different states. So it's like, so then I go back to the point, and I'm very vocal about this with our church, is I think sometimes, and it sounds terrible, but there has to be some type of fire and to ignite into the spirit of each person, because here, especially in Chicago, we all witnessed I would define as the collapse of Holy Trinity. Everyone knows Holy Trinity, that was on the west side, up of Narragansett over there by Diversey. And it was one of the larger parishes for such a long time, but that was because it was such an ingrained aspect of the Greek community. And then when they made an attempt with the school to go to like Deerfield over there, but then you saw this politics and stuff like that, we saw something sad happen, which was inevitably the church had to be foreclosed because of all these things, all these situations. There's so many things put into place. And so I try to tell everyone, I says, and what do you think makes our church or any other church immune to that? Realistically, because we think now, and we can think of us being here in Palatine, right here in Inverness and Palatine Roselle Road. I tell people, I said, if people move 5-10 years, that could happen very easily here. It could happen to any other church around here. It doesn't matter. So in other words, that also attitude too, because then if we're not ingraining into our people the importance of church, let alone engagement and participation, what's the future and what's the point of it? And I think that's where my focus is always big picture. I don't look small. Sundays are beautiful, but those are to me are just our general things. I always try to see big, because what are we doing to make the impact so that the future generations can participate and grow in it as well too? Because I look at my generation and everyone I talk to, they see the church as the word tradition or an event that they go to. I go for Christmas, I go for Pascha. And then when you bring up the story, because then if you talk about faith, okay, so you went. Then I ask them, so are you saved? I don't know, right? Is that because if you will go to church just once a year, I took communion once a year, I said, okay, great, pat on the back. Does it mean you're saved? See, there's attitudes where we don't know why the house. We were taught, and then we also have a checklist of like bare minimum, but that checklist is very poor in what you said, because we're so scheduled. I mean, look at me. I look at my schedule today. I'm able to break down all of my activities for the day. Okay, I look down, look, I got 7 things. And then the best part is, as a priest, I can have someone come and say, Father, my husband's not doing well, or something's going on. Okay, here's the curveball. But that's how I'm used to. I talk with a lot of family and friends. Anyone that we talk to, their schedule's so detailed to the hour that I ask them the question, when do you breathe? Or when do you find respite? When do you find rest? Because then they'll say, well, then that's what I have Sunday for. But I said, yeah, but Sunday, God created for us, but it's also so that we can also give thanks to God and to give glory to everything he gives us. And I said, and the best part of it is, as a church, we're not asking for much, hour and a half. Actually, I'm not expecting everyone to be there from Octoyora for the orthro and stuff like that, but, and then the other, go ahead, what were you gonna say? You didn't have
Oh, yeah,
something
like us, was come 7:30, so yeah.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, but
you-
not everybody.
But you
yeah.
guys, esisto έχετε μέσα σας, you live it,
Yes, yes.
το καταλαβαίνετε, τις ακολουθίες, you recognize it, the orthro, everything has a meaning to it. I guess the greater question then is, then how would you encourage engagement? Because then, when I speak church, I'm not just talking about physical, then it goes into the other divisions, philokos, ministries, activities, and all this stuff, because we then have struggles where then they'll go to the activity, especially when they're younger. That's why I said Sunday in my sermon, I really don't care about the youth. The youth, to me, when hold on, just hear what I say out. Actually, I do. It's the back of my hand. But the youth is so easy. They're the easiest, they're the best Christians. I'm worried about everyone else. Because the youth you can talk to and they'll talk to you. They are much wiser than most adults. I'm sorry, but get ready for it. The problem is the adults just stare at me. And I say, I really don't worry about the youth because forever, and I think that's when I'm a byproduct of this. I grew up in this metropolis. I've seen the archdiocese. Forever, they said, we got to take care of the youth and the youth this and youth that. And I said, I look now and I said, okay, all that stuff that you did for the youth, what did that accomplish? Because then the real reality is, what do we do for the family? What do we do for the parents? So they can teach the youth and participate with the youth. Like you said with the Sunday school, and I know Catherine, who is our Sunday school director for so many years, we've been talking about so many things. She has such a great program, but then we've had so many ideas. Do we turn into a family event? Do we make them come together and sit with their families? Do we break them up and move them up front? Do we do early? All these varieties. And the problem is, I go back to the situation where I think sometimes there's no perfect solution until a person, an individual steward, a family member can self-reflect and go back to the final bottom line is the church, is my faith a priority? Because if it is, then you will make the appropriate time. That's why I made the beginning of the complaint. I'm like, what do people do from 8 to 10 in the morning on a Sunday? My favorite Sunday, my favorite Sunday is, because I always laugh about? Take a guess. What Sunday do you think is my favorite Sunday that throws me completely off as a priest? What Sunday? Take a guess.
Instead,
Yeah, well, agape.
Yeah.
Because I don't have liturgy to pray. I already did it at 1:30 in the morning. I'm up at 7:30 and I'm like, okay, so now what do? I don't have to be at church till 11. And what are you gonna do? Watch cartoons with the kids? Okay, you see them, they eat breakfast. We're up, we're ready from 9 and we go and make sure everything's ready at 10. So then when everyone comes,
Obviously,
welcome them?
You don't have a lamb on the spit then.
no, I don't have the time, you know what I mean? Like myself, I can't do it. I'll have my family or people tell me like, they're up from 6 and they got the lamb already ready and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I'm like I said, I'm stuck getting ready for church. But then I look at it, I'm like, okay, so what are people doing? I mean, even if you have a coffee, even if you have a breakfast, you have your family, whatever. How do we get into a mindset to build that importance for the kids? And then I think the other thing too is, I don't know what parents are doing at home, but what do they say to the kids after church? What if they go to breakfast or they go home? Do they say, what did you think of church today? Did they talk about it? Right? Because then that means it goes back to the attitude. You participated. What'd you learn from it? Did you hear from Father Chris's sermon? Did you notice anything different? What'd you learn in Sunday school? I mean, all that stuff I think is what builds relationships and engagement in the church. But it has to start with us. And it has to start with us talking to the kids and talking to each other. Do you talk with your CZGO or a family, whoever's around, about what you learned in church today, or what's going on? Or metikori, whatever, with anyone.
the parent this time, Father, is not tough for the kids like ours before.
Tough.
Yeah. Okay, before ours to say, okay. Now it's not tough like us. They
Yeah.
stay in the phone, they stay in the rooms too long, it's not tough like us before.
And to that point, I get, I sympathize. The only answer I say is, it's just generation to generation. I mean, my generations are just a different generation. But I think the problem is, when I struggle with parents, they all tell me, it's a kind of a standard answer, that they're either, they're very tired, or they feel that they don't have enough time. And it's the only thing that boggles me too with my generation, when they talk about their kids or themselves, in my generation, I define it like 35 to 45, maybe even 50-ish, but by 50, there's always an excuse. There's always an excuse. There's a yeah, why they can't do something. I don't, you name it. I gotta go somewhere. We gotta go do this. You know what I mean? There's always something. And that's not just for Sundays. So then I go back to the question. So you put everything out, you put all the cards on the table. So when everyone says, I want a church that's dynamic, that's growing, that's vibrant, that connects, that builds and everything else. So then I tell everyone, and that's why I say it, I said it's Sunday, but I'm really honest. I would like someone to point to me another church, and this is not out of pride, I say this out of humility, where we check every single box that every Orthodox Christian could possibly want. I personally believe, now if I'm wrong, someone tells me, but I think we balance the languages very well. We are connecting with all ages, young and old. We are welcoming, we're inviting, we have beautiful families, we have friends. I mean, you have everything. I think here I truly am spoiled. We have everything you want. So then I go back to the very bottom end. It goes to the person. So where are you? And why are you not here? What is missing? And I think it goes back to a really hard point for us. And I want to hear from that, but because I'm pointing at sanitarios. I know. Now here's another scary fact. Are you ready for this one? We are an anomaly. So many anomaly means you must be dietary, where paraxeny, where we are actually doing very well. Most churches, Greek Orthodox, are dying. You heard what I just said? Most are dying. Where year after year after year, they are losing stewards. Now, and then I'm going to get to her question or point, but the one thing that's so scary, just put this in your mind. Εσύ έχει μεγαλώσει, αλλά έχετε ζει εδώ στην Αμερική και στο Σικάγο για 50, 40, 60 χρόνια, whatever. Φαντάσου, look at this. Let's just put some numbers together. St. Constantine Helen, το μεγάλο που ήταν στο Stony Island up in the hills. At their peak, okay, nearly 2,000 families, okay? Μιλάς τώρα 60s and 70s. Today, 2022, they're at 600 families, okay? So in 50 years, where did 1,400 οικογένειες, not one person, families, go? And if you tell me Kivias, you did not have that many Kivias from one church.
They spread through the suburbs.
But the other churches haven't grown. So what I'm trying to imply is where did, and that's St. Connie's, okay? So yeah, so the south side, you got 5 churches. You got Palos, Justice. I grew up there. So Palos Heights, Oak Lawn, St. Spiridon's Palos Heights. That's 4. Assumption, Homer Glen moved from Olympia Fields. So that's in that territory. And then if they even wanted, they could go to Joliet or to other places. So there's that many. And you're telling me that 1,600 have somewhat disappeared and that other churches haven't blossomed from that, because other churches, St. Nicholas, let's go to St. Nicholas Oak Lawn. St. Nicholas, their peak were like 800 to 1,000 in the 70s and 80s. Now they're like at 250. So what I'm trying to say is, where did everyone go? Because most did not go to a different denomination. They might go and visit a Lutheran, a Willow Creek or something like that. But the question is, so where are they? And then if we know where they are, they're there. Then the harder question is, so what separated them from their church? And there's 1,000 answers, right? We know that, but there's deep problems there, because then me as a priest, I see this up here. And I mean, that's what blows me away. When you think about these numbers, let's put some numbers. Here in Palatine, we have like 80,000 residents. Schaumburg, 75. Hoffman Estates is 60,000. Do you know how many Greek Americans or Orthodox, we always think Greek, or Orthodox are in just those 3 cities alone? My gosh, there's a lot. So then the question then you ask is, okay, so how would you be able to minister to them? And how would you reach out to them to welcome them and invite them to come and see? The problem in most of these cases is that as priests, we're one man. As a priest, there's not going to be multiple priests. And now, sadly, this is where you want to see a real pain for your church. There are only currently at the Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology about to be 20 to 22 graduates for this upcoming year. Okay? You already just said 22. Now, Fadasu here. Catholic Mitropoli has 9 to 7 openings right now for priests that they need. You already just said?
Wow.
They have 7 to 9. We have 8 metropolises, okay? So that means you're looking at they need 75 priests just for this year alone.
Wow.
Por fortuna.
when the parents don't encourage their kids coming out of college to go to become priests.
College is already too late.
Well, they have to start early.
You gotta, but I think it's, but not only to apply to start early, but why though? Why, why is the priesthood not encouraged? I became a priest.
My son-in-law, he's a lawyer. He's Eleni's nephew too,
Mhm.
and he wanted to go to become a priest. Do you think his parents would say, go ahead after spending 350,000 and not?
I think, okay, bravo. I think, bravo. No, that's a good point though. But a minute. But now, so there's a new encouragement, part two thought out. Now we gotta figure out the attitude of how do you make it a second profession in your life? So both the, que naisi que dikigoros, que ieres.
Yes.
Naisi que atros, que ieres.
Yes.
Whatever, daskalos que ieres, it doesn't matter. But then the other problem too is, the reality is that all these kids, all of them, they're not kids. Most of them are that. I remember my class in 2010, they were, maybe half my class, they were all like 15 above. They had families, they had Genya, like great hair. I'm like, what are you doing here? And they're like, well, this is my second profession and I want to do it as a vocation into service. Okay. And me, I'm like, wow, but I'm still, you know, being that I was born and raised in the metropolis and the archdiocese, I knew this stuff. And it just blew me away because I'm like, man, they're gonna go into this as a second job. And all the time, all the energy and the effort that's demanded of a priest, I'm like, how can they do that? I mean, think about this. And this is just a kind of, all this discussion is food for thought about where we are currently. Is a priest is what? A priest is a liturgist, he does the akolutheas. A priest is a preacher, napi kirigmata. A priest is a minister to minister to the needs of the community. That includes prayers, that includes visitations, that includes funerals, trisaya, mysteria. Oh, and then the priest also has to be a fundraiser to help raise funds for the community. The priest has to be an office manager. The priest has to do, in other words, he has like 10 hats. So how does he do that? And then you're gonna say to me, that's why with me, you know, being, okay, I'm not implying anything great, but just being a younger guy, I have the energy, but you know, that dissipates very quickly. So when I think of my elders or anyone else, it blows me away to see how they either are able to do it or how they're able to maintain to do it. And that's the reality, because they just don't exist. Now you're gonna say, okay, well, how do we help them out? How do we get to that? But that we can talk about another point, but I didn't get a chance to answer a couple questions, so please forgive me. Go ahead.
My name is Helena Accomplished, and I am Evgenia's sister-in-law. I'm currently visiting. I came from Greece and I went to St. Connie's, the big church. That's where I got married. Then moved to Indiana and spent many years in St. Demetrius with Father Vicious. It was a church that was really growing back in the 80s, 90s. And participated in Sunday school, and we had a youth choir, and that is something that I would suggest to you, Father Chris. If you would like, we have a wonderful Sunday school, a lot of kids I saw, even though they came at about 15 minutes before the service was over. I was shocked. I was looking around saying, where are the kids in this church? And then towards the end, it's like, where did they come from?
Yeah, it's like a flood.
So that would be one suggestion that I would offer to you, to have a youth choir, if possible. And when I was assistant director of the choir, we used to do the first Sunday service. That gets the parents involved, coming to church, giving their kids another avenue to this ministry. They also used to sing the Friday night. Catechismus, and we used to sing the Saturday of the Soul.
Oh, wow, bravo.
Yes. So it was growing. Now the church is done.
Gone, it's gone.
I don't think I'm not there anymore. I now reside in Carmel, Indiana. We have a growing church there. We have converts as our priests. And it's marvelous to see them. And I say, if we don't have converts, we're not going to have priests. As you have alluded to the fact, there's only 20 graduates. In the winter, I'm in Arizona. There's 4 churches there. I attended and sang in the choir at Assumption. That church is growing by leaps and bounds. With yes.
Yeah,
With Father Andrew Barakis.
Yep.
Of Greek descent, and the convert, Father
Jacob.
Fantastic priest. St. Haralabos, a small church. That's done. Holy Trinity, the big church in Phoenix, is having problems.
Hmm.
St. Catherine's. Every one of our churches is having problems because we are fighting society,
Hmm.
who says, I offer you this, and the church says, I'm here, I won't change, and it shouldn't change. Because our Orthodox faith should not change. And so we have a lot of competition. When we raised our kids, they weren't in all these activities. No. There were no games being played on Sunday.
Yeah.
We have made Sunday an ordinary day,
Mhm.
not the day of the Lord.
Right.
So that is the fundamental problem. And all we can do is focus, each one of us, on our own family.
Right.
Set the example. And say, you know, to myself, if we're not going to church on time, then you may not go to your game. In other words, as you talked about being tough, we just have softened up as a society. We've become progressive, but in this progress, we have lost
We,
a lot.
and excellent, and the weakest one on that one is we've softened up, especially with the church, with our faith.
Yes.
Um,
Anytime to church, you don't have to check in at 9.
I mean, and that's across the board, because when I talk to people, I said, okay, so let's just take out the church aspect. Do you pray? Do you fast? How often do you do that? And then all the other leptomedias, because then we also, as society, is involved. I guess my only concern is when I talk with people about these situations, especially with like society, is how did we get to an attitude where we had to mend everything together instead of showing distinctions, especially about my faith? It's almost like we're kind of embarrassed about our faith. And you know why I think of that? When I say embarrassed, it's because we don't know. So let's go to the example. I can't tell you. Every person you talk to that's not Greek, and they're Lutheran, Protestant, Catholic, but Catholics have more similarities like us, but Lutheran, Protestant, especially the Bible thumpers, man, they're strong. And anytime the question comes up, bam, they already got their strength and response. And then us, you talk to them, oh, I don't know. Because then it shows our weakness. It shows like a waving, like why? And then I tell everyone, and then because when they all try to turn the curveball into the tradition, because especially we go into the Greek attitude, and then if they talk about ikos theodoio ton brio or ikos tipanti martio, I said, if there was no faith, that never happened in either setting. I said, if it wasn't for them to have held on to the traditions and the simple understandings of the faith for 400 years of slavery, to then give themselves hope and strength to then try to begin the apostasy, it never happens. So then I say to everyone, I said, we've now done the opposite. We now only know the tradition and that faith does not exist. Where then it's that water shedding and that clearing out now shows us into a very weakened state, because tradition and ethnic celebrations are good, but they're very temporal, because it's just kind of like blips on the screen. Here in March, October, another day, and we turn them like traditions. But I said, there's so much more meaning. There's so many blessings to it. And then I try to tell people, and that's the challenge where I see in time, as I said, I'm like, why not engage it so that you can express it? Because here's the best part that I've ever won. That's why I try to say this past Sunday with the golden rule, and other Sundays as well too. Every one of us who participates, whether we go to church or not, we are acting as an Orthodox Christian. When you go and do some philanthropic work, you go to help the poor. How did you learn that? Where did that come from? Some magic thing that told you in your brain? No, your parents either expressed to you the importance of giving, of serving and helping. And I used to tell parents, I tell kids my age, I said, why do you think your parents, anytime they had συγγενή ή ξένο στο σπίτι σας, τι κάνετε? Θα βάλετε τα καλύτερα καλύματα, τα έχετε στρώσει όλα. Very, and can see the many, all the kids, we had to be ready, welcome them like it's very proper. Why did you do that? Who told you to do that? I always make fun of it. Marika, who told you to do this stuff? But it's true. You learned this from some way, somehow.
From generation to generation.
Correct. And it also then stems from one simple area, and that comes from Christ and our faith. That's what I'm trying to express to everyone. These didn't just happen. It didn't come from like us saying, before Christ, when we think of like Alexander the Great and all this stuff, that this is how. No, all these things and attitudes, especially for neighbor, for love, for compassion, for lemosini, and all these attitudes, they all came from the understanding of our faith and our relationship with God and with each other. But the problem is now we just do stuff, and sadly we're doing stuff very poorly or not at all. And then in turn, we don't know where it originated from. Because if you ask the kids, they'll be like, I tell them, like, where did you learn this from? Or who told you this? That's if they do, but you see this. I have kids now. Let's go to the example. I was just reading it. Someone had posted something on social media about what is expected of a man, or like a man should be in general, like the appropriate charisma of a man. That when someone comes, you don't sit down and shake their hand, you actually get up and greet them. When someone comes to your door, you welcome them with open arms and say, who are you? How are you? And welcome, and whatever it might be. Like they gave a whole listing, but it was like proper, it was etiquette, it was respect, sevagement, timi, all of these attitudes and where they came from. But then if you look at modern day, again, it goes back to what we were hinting before. We have we really wavered in those things because we've turned them into, they're not priorities. And the disturbing fact of these attitudes is that now, who do the kids have as role models? Who do the parents have as role models? I talk to parents my age, and I brought up Sunday. That's why I said about social media. Social media, I actually know, I truly believe this on. I've been trying to read, study, whatever. I think it's actually a test. I really do. You want to know why? Because literally on social media, someone could post right now, okay, and they could put something on there and then say, I might not like this. So you have two choices. You can either write, this is silly and make fun of it, or you don't have to say anything at all. Or if you like it, great, and move on. But you don't have to do anything. But then we, for some reason, engage. We, for some reason, get in and say, oh, I got to participate because after seven after, or after, you know, whatever the case would be. And I tell people, what's the purpose? Now, your age group, thank God you guys have your wisdom and you'll be on it, but it's not necessary. But I'll even see, like, my parents have Facebook and they'll share something, which I find sometimes to be either, I don't know, ridiculous or silly, something. And I'm like, and I look at my sister, my brother, I'm like, why did they post that? And I'm like, what's the gain? But they just did it though, either, whatever. My dad said sometimes they do it on accident. I said, oh, great, we got that too.
They're all dying for recognition. That's what I think.
Well, it's attention.
When
Attention.
recognition, but the wrong kind of recognition.
Well, it's
Attention.
okay, now it goes back to the other topics as well too. When we go back to our role models, who were your role models growing up? Parents, okay, bravo, let's make that equal. Godparents, excellent. Teachers, what else?
Priests.
Okay, excellent. Give me some other examples. Now, doctor, let's go to like level 2. What would you say was like the next level? Or at least you would see often, you can say, you know what, aftos maybe Kalos Anthropos or Aftita Kaliginek or whatever. Where else would that also come into play? Church. I would assume even, hold on, even TV though, when I look back at like TVs from 40s and the 50s and the 60s, there's a lot of wholesomeness, even in the shows, all of them, you name them, right? Okay. Even if it's comedy, or even if it's, you know, you had dramas or I look at all of them from Leave It to Beaver to this stuff. Now mine were always like the Three Stooges and all those silly stuff, because my dad would watch it and I watch it too. But when I look at it, you know, I look at modern day, I mean, these modern day we define as role models, they're not role models. They're just people. They're people who have, for some reason, have become viral. Do you know what viral means? Viral is a terminology now where it's like spread and everyone sees it. Where it's funny, you want to laugh? It still blows me away. So I did a gamo here in July. Actually, you know what? Let's go on here. I did a gamo in July that has 200, wait a minute, I'm gonna find it for you. Where is it? It's really funny. Because I don't know how I got that high. Is it this one? I think it's this one. On Facebook, it has like 200 something thousand views. This one on YouTube has 313. Okay, so it's George Soros and Angelica Mitsiopoulos. Okay, and all what happened was, yeah, it's Facebook because you can't see it on here. So here we got 313 and everything else, but it blew up so much, not in a bad way, well, kind of, but like everyone was like watching it, and it would see the service. Now the service was what, 55 minutes? That includes the sermon and the pictures and stuff like that, and for no reason. It was just because it was a wedding that one person saw, but then they shared it and said, look, this is a Greek Orthodox wedding. And then another person shared it and it just started going viral. And it kind of blew me away because I had no connection and I had no idea what they were doing. But then you get comments and commentary. They're like, everything you could think of. I actually laughed because you would see them. You'd have one comment say, what's wrong with the photographer? Too many pictures, too much this. I mean, we're all critics, right? We know what to do. This is how it's done. And correct. And I sit back and I'm like, wow, I'm like, that's pretty profound because the whole premise, by the way, why we record most of our stuff is not just so that we can receive some sort of promotion. It's not that. A lot of these I also, especially for YouTube, I offer for people who live far away. So they request mostly because they either have family who couldn't come in, or they have family in Greece, because you can watch YouTube in Greece. And then from there, they're able to see Apathia live and go from there. Same with a lot of the funerals and everything else. So when I get these, it's very puzzling because when we go back to the role model syndrome, you know, when you look at modern day, I get really sad because there are no true role models anymore. And then even from us, the great ones, the foundational ones, the parents, why do you think, how about this one? Why do you think, and I've had to bury some of your friends, okay, and stuff like that. Why do you think their children or those children cry so much more than I would say than you did when your parents passed? I truly believe it. I'm not implying that you didn't cry,
I know that,
but I think they cry now more.
because they feel guilty, they didn't spend enough time with them.
Could be guilty. It could be the loss that they know.
were not- they didn't respect them.
I think it's the loss
They
that
didn't
they
show
might not wanna have that
There's some
guidance, that love, that stuff that
Yeah,
the parents give them.
Yeah, and I think with your parents, I look at my Yaya and Papu, I look at, you know, the great grandparents or whatever, you know, they really were transitional. They passed the baton to their children.
Yeah.
You're the next generation, do what you need to do. My generation, when I talk with these kids, it is truly an attitude of loss. I feel it too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not implying when we lose a parent that it's just easy.
Yeah.
Whether it's young or old, it always hurts. But my generation, it's that much harder where they literally look and feel lost. Whether their parents lived to be 80 years old, whether their parents were, 55, 60, it doesn't matter. However it might be, they feel truly lost. And I think it's because we are so dependent on your age group. Do you guys not see that? Even our church. Think about this one. If I didn't have all of you as philanthropos, as volunteers and everything else, where would this church be? You know what I do now? You ready for this one? Oh, I go up to all of your children. I go up to all the girls and the guys that says, where are you gonna be in 20 years? Are you gonna be a yaya bringing with your madili and bringing me a prospero? Like maybe a yaya papu? And they kind of look at you, they kind of smile. So you know the answer is no. So then I tell them, where do you see yourself in 20 years in your church? They don't have an answer.
The generation though, I saw it at St. Catherine, I see it with my own kids. There's a longing for that reconnection. You see it in just the naming of children right now. My kids' generation, their contemporaries that are having children are all naming their kids in the traditional Greek saint names. I'm a Pam, I'm a Panayota, but I went through life and I continue
As
to go
Pam.
through life as Pam. I have a cousin who's a Debbie, who's a Panayota. We had American names.
Yeah,
My kids' generation, I mean, my granddaughters of the Onicia Cassiani, you ask, it's not a family name.
yeah.
Ask my kids why
don't
they
want
chose
it.
that name. It's because they have an affinity towards that saint.
Mm,
Because my daughter knew who Saint Cassiani was and
Mhm.
knows her story and thought that would be a beautiful name for her daughter. They're not family names. In our church, we had Sebastiani, we had, I mean, all these beautiful saints'
Yes.
names. So I think this generation is longing for the connection. They're trying to maintain a connection. I think they're way more well-read and educated about our education and our theology than my generation
Mhm.
was. Truly, my children know way more than I do. They know the hymns, the troparia, I mean, it's unbelievable to me what they know. And my children, their first language is English. They know very little Greek, but they know the liturgy in Greek, they know the troparia in Greek, they know the kontakia. I mean, it's amazing to me what they've learned through Sunday school and camps. And, we had a fanari in the Denver metropolis, Ionian Village, all those things my kids did it. They long for it, they respect it. They understand it and they are living it. I wanted to comment on having it be a lifestyle. So I think my children included are not regular Sunday churchgoers, but They follow the daily, readings on
Mhm.
online. They know all the holidays. They read the prayers in their homes. So I think there's a shift, but I think there's a real longing for that connection. And I think the key is to figure out how do we bridge that disconnect in terms of the regular participation, because I think many of them are in some ways, I don't want to compare, but they're deeply faithful and they're deeply knowledgeable,
Mhm.
but there's a disconnect in regular participation. I envy my children and where they are in their spiritual life compared to how long it's taken me. I mean, we're all on a journey and it's a continuous journey, but they are way farther ahead at their ages. With all due respect to my mother and my parents and my grandmothers, because we lived in a very spiritual and involved home. We've always been involved. But I did not know what my children know about scripture and about the saints' lives and about the rhythm of the liturgical year.
So,
And I think many of them are like that in their generation.
so when are you gonna give kudos to yourself and to your family though? Because what I'm trying to imply is, at some point, it was a conversational that was engaged and encouraged.
Well, it was a lifestyle choice for us. We were very blessed in the community we were in. My husband's a convert,
Mhm.
but he was also raised in a very religious home. So it was part of our upbringing, that rhythm. I'm not saying it to pat myself on the back. I'm looking at their generation as a whole, their friends, the children, the young adults that grew up in our parish and that I see in other parishes. I think there's a real longing to be, and I think there's an affinity. But I think that they're not regular participants in liturgy.
I agree.
I don't know.
No.
why, But I really do think that we're not losing them necessarily because of their faith. Because I think they're deeply faithful, many of them, most of them.
Mhm.
But I don't think they've made the participation in the services primary.
I think, so I agree very much, and obviously knowing your kids and your family as well too. And the whole situation, my thing that I've witnessed as a priest now going on 10 years is my ministry to people, especially in that age group, reminds me, and it's not, I don't say this in like, I'm a comparison or prideful manner. It reminds me of those who would go up to Christ and ask him questions. You know,
Yeah.
Rabbi, who's my neighbor? What does it mean to pray? I get people, I don't know. My predecessors, I think with everything, my hope is for everyone is to realize that everything is very, even though our church is traditional, it grows. And growth can also be defined as evolve. When I say evolve, it just means that it grows into the uniquenesses that God allows it through its divine providence and grace. So that means that even though we are the institution, we're the foundation, it also has these branches in which it blossoms so they can then blossom new and ripe fruit to the generation, the situation that we're in. With whatever the devil plays with everyone, or with whatever society deems fit for our people. So what that means is, I'm not implying that we need to change stuff, but that we should always be a beacon so that we can welcome anyone and anyhow to want to participate and engage. The problems I kind of hit it before is that I physically do not have enough time in a day to do what I would like to do. That's why, like, when we posted, 2 weeks ago about the job description for the church, for the director of ministries and office, if the stuff internally are done in the church that I don't have to be bogged down with like my 10 hats that I said, I can then actually go and minister. And I can't tell you, look at our church. And this goes back to everything you said. We, this year alone, have converted, I think we've performed 12 to 15 chrismations this year. I specifically do them on Sundays to show that your church is alive. I could do it on a Monday afternoon for all I care, but I do it so you can actually see that this is relative. So then you then in turn can also be disciples through your actions so that people could see what your faith is about. Because I can't tell you, everyone, and naturally, if I wear my collar, if I wear a robe or wherever I'm at out in public, you would think it'd be the opposite where people don't want to talk to you. For some reason, it's like a magnet. Everyone always has something to say to me or ask me a question. And I'm like,
Because the world's in trouble.
I think it goes back to what Pam says. I think there is a desire. I think everyone wants to, but it's like, I go back to like that's why when you read the gospel, and that's why our Bible study, when you read the gospel, that's why 2,000 years before and 2,000 years later, it's still relatable to modern day. Where I look at the people and when they go up to Christ, and whoever it was, whether it was someone who was sick or someone who spiritually wanted to be healed or psychologically or whatever it might be, you hear how they come and speak to God, or even the scribes and Pharisees, even if they try to undermine him, at least these were in avenues of trying to discuss and understand the hows and the whys. And then you see this thought out with our kids as well too. And I'll get people who ask me, but I think the one thing that I struggle with is it goes back to, I think, a rooted situation. It's not so much the liturgical. See, the problem with us as Christians is we have to remember that for our salvation, every action and participation in the church is a necessity to gain our salvation. If you pray, you're not saved. If you go to church, you're not saved. If you give alms, you're not saved. If you fast, you're not saved. It has to be the whole gamut. That's the problem. And we don't understand that I have to participate. But it goes back to what you said. Now, obviously, there's ways that, some struggle, some don't do it all the time, some do whatever. But the whole premise is it goes back to a very one simple answer. You have to define yourself. I am a Christian. I'm going to live as a Christian. And it has to be black and white. You can't say I'm a Christian on Sunday for an hour and then you do whatever you do, or then the rest of your week you become ignorant to just the general lifestyle that we all live in. And then we lose the priority of what it means to be a Christian.
I'm here listening to you. And at my age and all the churches that I have been growing up in and participated in, I feel that we have lost love. Because when you walk into a church and nobody greets you, that hurts. I think that people are so consumed with technology and the busyness of our lives, we've forgotten to say, hi, it's been so long since I've seen you. How are you feeling? Just something, just show some kind of compassion. And I think our churches are lacking that. When I first moved 23 years ago to DeKalb at Little St. George, which you served at, there was a little short, older man, reminded me of my dad. And he had the little fisherman's cap and he stood by the door and he greeted every single person that walked in that church. We've missed that. He's passed. But seriously, put all of the Lucia, all of the everything that we have in our lives, okay? If you don't have love and respect for someone. This lovely woman Sunday, I came to church because my family was busy and I just needed, I said, the devil's not going to take me home. And I came by myself. This lovely lady parked near me. And that's one thing, Father, I think maybe the church should consider having a little bit more handicap spaces.
I promise something that more.
But she welcomed me in her own way. You know what I'm saying? I needed that. And I needed the liturgy. No matter how I understood it or how I consumed it, it's me, okay? People need to have compassion, love, and respect for each other. And then I think things would become better.
That's the underlying. I'll never forget, just so we're going to conclude a little bit too. And that's excellent. When I was first assigned here, when Metropolitan Nathaniel told me I was coming here, I asked him pretty straightforward. I said, so what do you want me to do? I said, what do you want me to do? What are your goals? What do you want to do for St. Ecadius? You know what he said to me? This was what? 18. This was after a few months with obviously what was discussed with Father Peter and then myself before he was going to announce on the feast day. He simply told me one thing, just love them.
Oh,
That's all he said to me. He said, just love them. And I said, and I'm like, just love them. I'm like, now you can say, like, what does that mean? But then that's like, it's all in the word. I'm like, just go into it. What does it mean to love them and how and in what way? And you're right. So that the one thing I like to highlight, and we're going to finish off that one, is my predecessors not here. They really were heroic priests who established these churches that we have now currently. I always think that they did the best that they did to the means and ability that they could, especially for the intensity of what was the demand then. The amount of Greeks, let's just solely then plus with the ever-changing environment, the world, and then all those things. Where I think sometimes we get caught up and lost the vision and in the focus of what it means to be a Christian, to love and be welcoming.
It
Well,
is
then-
the basis of our religion, love.
I know 100%. So the thing is, there's no question to it. I just feel that the struggle with it is that at a smaller church, like at St. George and other ones that I've been a part, when you are like a real family, it's natural. At a church here where we have like 550 families, it almost has to be like taught, which is kind of upsetting. And I've seen that at other churches too, though. I St. D Chicago, so that's where it always remained with me. I just kind of leave you with the story and going from what you said. There was a special needs gentleman who was about 50 years old. He drove, he was high functioning, but he didn't like wearing pants. So he came in one day wearing shorts, and an elderly gentleman who was working at the Pangadi, the narthex, said, "You can't be in here dressed like that." Okay. So then the gentleman was so hurt, he would go to church, sit outside in his car every Sunday and whatever. And then about 2 years later, I meet his mom and his sister, noting that the gentleman had passed. And obviously the mom with tears, and I thought it was more so the tears for the son, but it was more the tears of the feeling, because the child, the man, was did not felt welcomed and to be in his church because of his shorts or just of his thing. So when I hear those attitudes, I'm always extremely vocal and defensive about the attitude of love and welcoming everyone. I mean, you know, if it's a destitute or whatever, that's who we are. And my struggles with my generation, you know, I say my generation, I'm not worried about the kids, my generation, you know, we're so caught up with these. And then I don't know if it's with the pandemic too, but even before the pandemic, it's very, I don't know, it's a very perplexing ethos. It's a very perplexing livelihood work. Because I worked in a restaurant when I was in college. I served, so I know how to greet people. I talk to everyone. I try to relate with them and stuff like that. I see people in the narthex. I said, "You're not a money changer. I don't need you to count money." So I tell them, I'm like, "Lily, turn and welcome people. Have someone give up the bowl and say Kalimera.
Yeah.
Hola."
It's not, Father.
I mean, it's not that, it's not,
that hard.
it's not that hard. I agree. But what's scary is it's foreign. I think it's a society and
People are
it,
afraid to speak to someone.
yeah, I don't know.
Want to be misunderstood.
And when you talk about the youth are all about being in a group, in with their friends, not being outsiders. So you walk into a church as a young adult right now and no one talks to you, that's a problem.
Yeah,
It's
That's
anywhere,
fine
right?
for
Because they
everybody.
don't go places that they don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
They don't go places that are foreign to them unless they're in a pareja,
yeah,
right? They go
100%.
with their pareja. So
Exactly.
you walk into a church, I mean, you know, my daughter, when she moved here 5 years ago, came with our kumbara. And she's like, "I'm going to St. Ignatius because I want someone to go. I'm not going by myself." So she came with our kumbara that's here. But I think that's a very,
Yeah,
I'm older, I guess, so it's not as big a deal. I'll walk in. But I will tell you, we've come to this church now 6 or 7 times. No one has said hello to us. We're clearly new. We signed the guest book.
you know what's scary?
No one has said, hello, welcome, not
No
even
one
asked
said-
us who we
just-
You
are.
said it from it, and then,
No, and I'm not criticizing anybody, because it's, we've tried to talk to people,
Mothers.
but, you know, no one has noticed, let me put it that way, no one has noticed or been concerned that someone new walked into the church and hasn't said hello. When we moved to Colorado, we went to Cathedral,
Hmm.
my husband and I and the kids, first Sunday in Colorado. No one spoke to us.
Hmm.
Next Sunday, we went to St. Catherine. We had 5, 6 people before we even lit our candle.
Hmm.
Comes to us, say, "Oh, welcome, where are you new? We've never met before." It's a big difference. And guess where we stayed for 25
Yep.
years?
Can I tell you something? And then you can say something, we'll finish up. If you wanna laugh, I truly believe, and it's from most of them, it's really embarrassing. They don't know each other. I have a bad problem here. So you understand something, here in St. Ignatius, being that we're about to celebrate our 50 years, we are we were defined for a long time as our church is very cliquish. You know what I mean by cliquish?
Yeah.
I'll tell you why it was cliquish, because, but it's like, when I said cliquish, it was because I look at everyone. We are either from the same family. I'm gonna point out my family, who I love, the Alexes. They have a large family. So them alone, they could take like 2 tables, so they all know each other. That's one. Then you've got maybe from the same Koryo, then you see them all go over there. Then you got Kubaryo, but they're all then all over here. Or then they're from the same country. They could be from Kipro, and they're all like the Kipre come together. Or then they're from like Palatine. It's so surreal when you kind of see.
So
And-
how about if you don't know someone? though?
Oh, I've done this. I've
Just
done
in
this
general. If you don't
every-
know someone, say, hello, good morning, my name is Pam,
every.
welcome.
Every call,
Or-
it
yeah.
depends, but the best was like my first September in 19. And then, obviously the pandemic and stuff like that, but every September I had it be as like a welcome Sunday where literally I said, everyone go up to someone else you don't know and greet them and say who you are. And it does, it works, but it's really perplexing to realize that internally, that's not even you, internally, there's an embarrassment, a shame on them because they don't know who the other person is and they don't want to show that. So they'll know faces. I don't know her name. So what are you gonna say to her? Carlos Sirtes? I've been here for 30 years. And it's happened. I can't tell you, it's happened. I had someone come and say, I've been coming here for 30 years. Someone just said welcome for the first time. And I'm like, welcome how? Like Calimera was like, no, is this your first time here? I'm like, oh, you know what I mean? It's like, but then I try to tell people like maybe it's a
I'd
new.
rather have that happen than have no one say hello at all.
There's
No, and I'm saying, I've said that, it's on me as well, and this is not a problem just at San Ignacio.
I agree. It's
I'm-
across.
but it's an example, I was using it as an example for the younger people who really require that sense of security
So I
with
guess-
their pareja.
But Pam, so my question to you then I bring up to my generation is why is it not natural? I know, like me, so it's very odd. You see me, I go to
Because
Greek fest.
we respond to screens, Father, we don't talk to people anymore.
It's really,
That's
it
why.
blows me away. Like, I just go up to people and say, hi, how are you? But you see, I also have that ethos, not only from my, I don't know, my parents, my dad talks a lot, but, it was, I think really I gained it from like working. When I worked at the restaurants,
Yeah.
I had a cell and I talked to every human being under the sun, from richest to the rich, to the poorest to the poor. I had to talk to them, right? I talked to them, whatever. So I had there's nothing to hide. And so like now as a priest where I know at bare minimum, but that's natural to me, I just go up to everyone. And then my other parts was I try to remember everyone by name. I try to say their name, Erasmia, Eva, whatever it might be, so I can recognize them and build a relationship with them. So that I have a connection and go from there. But to other people, or sadly most people, it's again, I think that we have a serious problem. These are not a priority. Where then they're children. Have you ever seen children? I have children where now it's not that they're afraid to go to the priest, although I always used to laugh, like, oh, the priest has a beard, that's why he's afraid. I'm like, seriously? You're telling me in this entire world, their child has never seen another person with a beard? The what? Grizzly Adams or whatever. I'm like, very scary because I have a big beard, but they don't get it. And I look at them and I said, that's when you hear that terminology. You're given an excuse. I said, great. They've never seen me before. Let me come by your house and do an ayasmo so they can get to know me or stuff like that. And to them, that's foreign. But you're like, whoa. But you see, that's what's the problem now. Before, you as a parent says, "Naton keretisis, tikanis kiria, get to know them. It's a persona, it's a attitude. But we are not encouraging that, not only with my generation, but with our kids. It's almost like it's one or two avenues. We either completely shelter them, really cover, or it's no holds barred. Where they left, huh? If you talk to them on Sundays, they all yell at me because if you see our kids like on Sundays after Sunday school, oh God, it's rag show. They're all running across the gym. One's killing another, throws a ball, and the worst is they'll like run over the ladies. Caroline, the 96-year-old. Oh man, if she had a magura, she would probably like swipe because and she said, but she's right though. Like these kids, and I go to the parents. No one says anything. You know what I mean? Is that someone's phone? Well, that's what I was about to say. I'm like, okay. Alana, you had one last thing. We're gonna finish with you.
First of all, I like to compliment you because I think that we cross to most people and I'm, new to the fellowship, that you